You are probably reading the wrong books, and that sounds horribly pretentious, but luckily, being pretentious isn't actually a bad thing. It's just anti-intellectualism. So what do I mean by the wrong books? Well, that. While I could rant and rave all day about romantic fantasy specifically, and I will, that's coming, I'm not actually talking here specifically about romantasy. I'm speaking here more specifically about the frustrating and frankly frightening lack of diversity in literature right now. In an era where diversity actually seems more prevalent. Stick with me. When it comes to literature, my personal two great loves are genre fiction, specifically fantasy, science fiction, and horror, and fiction in translation from various languages and cultures around the world. I cut this channel's teeth on fiction in translation, promoting diverse works from various voices all around the world. And there's something that I've noticed about these two realms of fiction, fantasy and genre fiction, and fiction in translation, which is that they are more popular than they have ever been. But I'm not happy with how they are popular. Here in the UK, the big bookseller chain is called Waterstones. And I was browsing the Waterstones website, looking at what's new and upcoming. And on the one hand, I was thrilled to see that most of what was being pushed to the front and center for everyone to look at was fantasy and fiction in translation. I then felt as quickly deflated when I realized that all of the fantasy fiction that I was seeing were lazy carbon copies of the already exhausted romantic fantasy genre and all of the terrible toxic tropes that it involves. Read the blurb of any upcoming romantasy book, and just like A Court of Thorns and Roses and so many other big romantasy books, the blurb will read like, as I've said in the past, a piece of conservative, heteronormative propaganda, wherein a young woman falls in love with a brutal, horrible fairy man. I'm so sick of it. And it's all that we see now in the world of fantasy. At least on the surface. That's what's getting pushed. Luckily, it's not all that exists. It's not all that's being published. But it's all that's really being promoted. Look at this. Do you know what this is? This is a brand new debut work of epic fantasy by a Black British writer. This is A Song of Legends Lost by M.H. Ayinde. This is a review copy from Orbit. I've been reading it and I've been genuinely adoring it. This could be the next big work of epic fantasy. The kind of book that people talk about for decades. It is inspired by African mythology. It is diverse, it's queer, it's exciting, it's full of mystery and history and lore for you to sink your teeth into. No matter what kind of fantasy fan you are, there is something in here for you. It ticks every kind of box, except for the fact that it's not spicy and it doesn't have a horrible man for readers to weirdly obsess over. And the kicker here is that I haven't seen this book get promoted. I went into a Waterstones recently and I saw this book in the new releases section, just slotted into the shelf, sitting there, almost invisible. On the table next to it, on display, was the newest Romantasy thing, which was also in the window next to the other big new Romantasy thing. It's not fair, it's not okay, but I also understand why. Publishing is a cutthroat business, and playing it safe is how all entertainment operates. The big films, the big pop music, the big Romantasy books, they're the things that get pushed because they are guaranteed to sell. They are safe bets, they are easy. They're also lazy and uninteresting. They don't do anything. They don't push boundaries. They play it safe. And as I keep saying, most romantasy fiction is conservative, heteronormative propaganda. Wait, hang on, stop for a sec. If you're enjoying this video, if you're getting something out of it, if you think that it's worth $1 a month, then you can give me $1 a month by supporting me over on Patreon. There are loads of different tiers. My patrons get a whole slew of benefits and unique content. Every single patron, no matter what tier they're on, gets access to an exclusive private Discord server, and you're helping my channel continue because this channel is almost entirely funded by Patreon. Without Patreon, my channel vanishes. So if you can spare $1 or $3 a month, you get a lot out of it, and I get the support that my channel desperately needs. So thank you in advance. Let's carry on. Now let's talk about fiction in translation. When it comes to authors and the literature that they make, two of my favorite countries are South Korea and Japan. These two East Asian nations, both of which I've lived in, put out, in my opinion, much of the best literature that the world has to offer right now. But instead of the wonderfully diverse and complex thematic stories that so many of these great authors put out on a yearly basis, what are we seeing instead? Cozy books about cats and cafes. That is all you see when you go into a bookshop or go onto their website. These books are all Korean and they're all Japanese. That's great. And they are all cozy books about cats and cafes. Or maybe instead of a cafe, it's a restaurant. Ooh. I'm not seeing the newest Korean horror novel by Pyun Hye-young, or the newest literary masterpiece by Japan's Miyako Kawakami. No, I'm seeing cozy books about cats and cafes. And you know what? I spend half my time in cafes, and I have a cat whom I would give my life for. I love cats and cafes. I would open my own cat cafe. I love these things. But there are thousands of them, and they are all the same book. And I'm not saying any of this without having explored these things. I've read like 10 Romantasy books and at least 10 cozy Japanese and Korean books about cats and cafes. They're everywhere. And of course I check them out. I've reviewed them, I've promoted them, some of them are good. But they are all the same. So once I've read a few, I've read them all. And I don't know how much more I can take. So when I say that you are reading the wrong books, what I mean is that it's great that we're seeing so much literature in translation, but it's the wrong stuff. It's the safe and boring stuff. It's the cozy stuff. And as a fantasy fan who grew up as a big nerd who loves RPGs and Dungeons and Dragons and all that other nerdy stuff, it's really cool to see that fantasy is now at the forefront. Fantasy books are in the windows of bookshops. They're on the lips of everyone who talks about books. Everyone loves fantasy now, as long as it's romantic fantasy with toxic male love interests. I'm seeing so many of my favorite genres and styles of books right at the forefront of everything, with a massive, massive asterisk, as long as it's the boring stuff. And once again, I know I'm not saying anything unusual or groundbreaking here. The popular stuff is usually the more boring stuff. Pop music is generally not as stimulating or exciting or interesting as smaller and more niche genres. The same goes for the big action blockbusters, and the same goes for romantasy and cozy books about cats and cafes. These things are safe. They are palatable. They reach the broadest audience possible. There are few people who won't enjoy a good cozy book about a cat and a cafe. Romantasy is a clever blend of two popular genres. These things are so broadly palatable, of course they're going to be the popular things. I understand that very, very well, but it doesn't stop me being frustrated. Just because I understand the principle of why doesn't mean I shouldn't be asking for more and expecting more and hoping for more. What I hope happens now is that people realize just how much great fiction there is within these niches. That they don't just keep reading the same recycled A Court of Thorns and Roses and Fourth Wing crap, but instead go, hey, I enjoy books set in fantasy worlds. Maybe I'll try reading X, Y, and Z. Books that are more experimental and political. Books that explore morally grey characters and political and social and philosophical and religious allegories. Books that are queer. Books that are diverse. Books that are written by authors who aren't conservative middle-aged white women. This is better than A Court of Thorns and Roses. M.H. Allende deserves to be more successful than Sarah J. Maas. And that's not going to happen. I'm not saying it's because of racism, but I also kind of am. Because an epic fantasy novel inspired by African mythology just isn't as palatable to a broader audience as a toxic romance between a boring self-insert young protagonist and some weird horrible fairy man written by a white American woman. We need diversity. And it's so frustrating for me to see the potential for diversity in what's being published and promoted and read right now, without it actually feeling like diversity is being met. Growing up, fantasy was an enormously niche genre, read by nerds who never go outside. Me. Now, it's the most popular genre. Cool. Not cool. Because it's the boring, lazy, toxic version of fantasy. Fiction in translation is also massively popular now. That's so great. But they're all safe and uninteresting, cozy books from 2 countries. That's it. Where's the rest? Where's the diversity in the diversity? I feel like we're taking one step in the right direction and we just need to keep pushing. So like I said, I hope that Romantasy readers continue to explore fantasy and go deeper. And I hope that the people who are picking up the cozy books from Korea and Japan then read some of the other more complex, more interesting books from Korea and Japan, and also continue to read diverse fiction from other parts of the world. Hey, I enjoyed this cozy Japanese book. Maybe now I'll read this Chinese science fiction book. And after I've read this Chinese science fiction book, I'll read some African fiction or Eastern European fiction or Argentinian fiction. And I'm going to keep going and going and going and pushing forward. That's what I hope happens. And I'm sure that's happening for a lot of readers. And in the meantime, what's being pushed continues to be the cozy stuff and the romantasy because that stuff is safe and palatable. I get it. But if you're someone who isn't pushing beyond the safe stuff, you're reading the wrong books and you need to dig deeper. But because the stuff that's deeper doesn't get pushed and promoted, and so many of us just look on the surface because our lives are busy, that means that so much goes unexplored and unpromoted, and it is valuable stuff. Life is 2 things. It's difficult and it's short. And because it's difficult, we take what's given to us because we don't have the time to dig deeper. And because it's short, we look for fun escapism like romantasy and cozy fiction. But you've got to dig deeper. You've got to dig so much deeper into these genres and explore the authors who are more diverse, who are pushing boundaries, who are doing the real hard work. It's worth it. You're reading the wrong books, but you don't have to be. There is a massive, wonderful world of fiction out there. And you can find plenty of recommendations of those things on my channel, so subscribe for books. The good ones.